TalkTainmentRadio.com.
We give you a reason to come.
The world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week at this time, Eastern Standard Time, with Mr. Neely Fuller, as we talk about the issues of the day, especially as it relates to issues surrounding race, racial relations, racism, and all the things that come with that. And joining me, of course, every week at this time at 10 o'clock a.m. live from Washington, D.C., is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., author of two of the most definitive works on this subject and on this condition or on this lifestyle, all the other words and terms you want to use to describe it. Let me welcome in Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, how are you doing, sir?
I'm still learning.
Mr. Fuller, I'm going to turn this whole thing over to you today. I'm going to follow your lead in terms of what it is you want to discuss. There are a lot of issues on the table, but I think I am moved today to let you lay down things or key points that you've been thinking about in the week, you've been observing, things that you want to address the people with. But before we get there, you can pick up Mr. Fuller's two works by going to www.producejustice.com. Real easy. Just go to producejustice.com. One word, producejustice.com. Follow the prompts, and it'll tell you how to get these two definitive works of clarity that let you see where many could not see what they're looking at. Now you can see what you're looking at and be able to take constructive action to counter it. Mr. Fuller, let you pick it up, go where you want to go in terms of what you've been observing, things you think are critical that you want to lay on the table. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Well, I'll just, within this frame of reference, I'll just say that what are we supposed to be doing on the planet? Everything in the universe starts with questions. And then people just work their way through answers. You come into the world asking questions. Every baby comes into the world asking questions. What is that? What is this? Who am I? At some point, the baby asks that, but that's way up the line. But immediately, the baby just looks around and sees things that he or she cannot recognize and ask questions about these things. If the baby's in a crib, the baby just becomes familiar with the crib because that's the entire world to the baby. And then the baby sees something, objects moving around, might be people, might be animals, a cat, a house cat or something. The baby doesn't know what any of these things really mean, what they're doing here. Or the baby doesn't even know that the baby is here. The baby itself doesn't have any knowledge of itself being here, whatever here means. So it's the same way. We're all babies in a way of speaking during our entire existence. I know as a young person in the country, I used to walk down a road when there were absolutely no lights anywhere. But back in the old days, before you had a lot of smoke in there and smog and whatever, industrial waste, you could see on a clear summer night, you could see stars. Looks like the whole sky was covered with stars. I mean, everywhere, just blanketed with stars. And you could see them very clearly on a quiet summer night, walking down a dusty road. You certainly couldn't make out anything else because there were no lights, no street lights or anything like that. So the stars were all you would be looking up at, and you could just barely make out the road that you were walking on, if you could make it out at all, if there was no moon. But I used to wonder, as a real young person, about what is all of that up there? And why is it up there? And what does it really do? And what does it all mean? And what does my existence mean in this grand scheme of things? And I think that at a subliminal level, we never really turn loose to that. And we shouldn't, because that keeps us searching. But I capsulized recently, and this is not in the book, it's 4 questions. What is it that I want to do? Because everything comes down to wanting to do something. The babe in the crib wants to do something. So it's 4 basic questions. What is it that I want to do? Why do I want to do it? That's the second question. How do I plan to do it? What it is that I want to do? And what do I expect the constructive result to be? And I think that every person, if we start talking about what we're going to do while we're here on this planet, each and every person should ask him or herself those 4 questions each and every day, not just at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, but all day long. You ask yourself while you're sitting at a desk or driving a forklift in a warehouse. You can ask yourself without having your mind drift too far away from what you're supposed to be doing at the moment that you have been instructed to do on the job. You ask yourself, what is it that I want to do? You always want to do something, even if it's just go to the post office today, or you want to call up someone on the cell phone and chat. So you ask yourself these questions. What is it I want to do right this minute? If I had my druthers, what is it I really want to do? Then the next question, why do I want to do it? And that's a big one. Why is it that I want to do this particular thing that I think that I want to do? Why do I want to do it? And then, of course, you should have a plan, or should be thinking about a plan. If you really want to do it, you'd be thinking about a plan about how you're going to do it. So how do you plan to do what it is you want to do? And then last but not least, the super important question. What do I expect the constructive result to be? That's underlined the word constructive. What do I expect the constructive result to be? And then you answer those questions. Write them down if you have to. I mean, because really you're talking about your time and energy, which, according to what I've written, the textbook for victims of white supremacy, it's divided into 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. So whatever it is you want to do is in one of those areas of activity. So you should think about what is it you want to do in each one of those areas at some time or another, so that you can just chart out, at least have some idea about what you want to do it and what you want to do, and you should know why you want to do it. And keep in mind that last one. What do you expect the constructive result to be? Now, somewhere there's some young person who is thinking about robbing somebody. Okay, what is it you want to do? Well, I think I'm going to rob this guy that I see over there in that other neighborhood, and I notice he drives a truck, And I think what he's got in that truck is something I can probably use. I think he hauls computers around or something like that. So you got that in mind now, you and your buddy, just walking around aimlessly because you don't know what you want to do. So now you're getting this idea that maybe you should rob that fella that drives the truck every now and then through the neighborhood that may have some computers in that truck that you can rob him of and you can sell and make some money where you can buy other things that you want. And that's what you got in mind. But you should stop and think, what do you expect the constructive result to be? Because that is not constructive.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not.
And so what you're saying is what people have to do, the key message here, because there just seems to be, Mr. Fuller, so much depression right now. I don't know if you're picking up on it like I see it everywhere. People just seem to be tired, worn out, don't know what to do, where to go, and now they're just not doing nothing except doing something in non-constructive, involving themselves. It's like they get into a routine, they play that routine out day in, day out, and they don't know anywhere else to go with it. And it seems like, in particular, black people seem to be just stuck. Am I right about that, Mr. Fuller? Are you getting that also?
Sure. And it's logical that they would be that way because the system that we're born in, just like that baby I was talking about, is so confusing that people just become exhausted from the confusion. People have been trained to wait around for someone to tell them what they should be doing. That's all we mostly do. I mean, the baby is waiting, and we're babies, really. All of the black people on the planet are really in a baby-like state. And we are very carefully trained to just sit around and wait for someone to tell us what we're supposed to be doing on the planet each and every day. I mean, what's the new fashion? Well, they got some new hats out here that somebody said that they manufactured them and they had too many of them because they were really hubcaps. And so somebody who's really thinking and making plans for black people, which would be the white supremacists, because they make all of the plans for black people, since black people don't have plans of their own. So the white supremacists in the system of white supremacy, which is the only government that we have on the planet, the white supremacists sit back and they say, well, we got a warehouse full of hubcaps that we don't know what to do with because that design of car is not even going to come out next year. So we got stuck with some hubcaps that we had already manufactured. We got about 80 million of them. And we were really thinking about having this new design car, but these hubcaps will not fit the wheels on that car. What are we going to do with them? Say, well, we'll sell them to black people. Hubcaps to black people? Sure. We'll call them hats. They'll buy them. We'll call them Harlem Spinners. Give them a fancy name, whatnot. Have a couple of hip-hop artists advertise them for them. They'll buy them. Black people will buy anything. They don't know what to buy. They get a little bit of money and they look around, what is it to buy out here? What is it that's important? What is it that will make me feel important? And so we'll tell them that everybody who's anybody is going to have one of these hats. I mean, if you don't have one of these hats, you're nobody. You're not even, shouldn't even be on the planet. I mean, with your dumb selves, But if you buy one of these hats, put one of them on, one of these Harlem Spinners, you will be somebody. For the first time in your existence, you are now have some claim to fame, some claim to a reason to exist with your empty heads. Because anything that goes in your heads is worth anything, we put it there.
Mr. Fuller.
But we're going to make sure that we're going to put plenty of stuff there that's not worth anything.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Fuller. Was there ever a time, and I just want your opinion on this and your research, was there ever a time that black people dominated and ruled the planet, was in control of anything? And if so, how did they act? And how different would that have been from how you say white supremacy operates? Mr. Fuller.
I don't know. That's the answer. I have heard people say that they know and that they have learned from people who did know, which I guess would be, if not the white supremacists, who would most certainly know, because they know how they interacted with black people the first encounter that they had. So whatever it was that happened, we do have this evidence that whatever black people were doing, they failed to be smart at the crucial time that they should have been smart. No matter how great their glorious history may have been, when they encountered the first white people who had the idea in mind of a system of white supremacy, which means mistreating people based on color.
What do you think that was like, Mr. Fuller? I know we don't know, but let's just speculate, if we will, just for a minute. What would that have been like? What would have been in the black person's mindset, and what would have been in the white person who turned out to be a white supremacist? What would they have been thinking as they dealt with that black person for the first time, in your opinion?
Well, the first thing they may have had to have thought, and all evidence shows this, all of the evidence shows this, they weren't thinking about those white people thinking about establishing a system called white supremacy. They certainly did not have that in mind, that these people had this in mind, that we are going to mistreat you based on your color. Because that's apparently all of the evidence shows this, and the white supremacists themselves brag about it in all their history books. So that much is recorded. And they teach us to us. We conquered you. We conquered you, and we bragged about conquering you. And we still, in a indirect way, brag about it right to this very minute. And we were able to conquer you because you didn't understand what we were doing. And the reason you didn't understand what we were doing is because you are not very smart. And we have proven that you are not very smart, and the fact that you are subject to us proves that you are not very smart. No matter how smart you may have been, you ceased to be smart when you encountered us, because we became smarter than you.
Whoa.
Where's the evidence? Because we conquered you. You didn't conquer us.
Now, that would imply, Mr. Fuller, that eternally white people are smarter than black people, and black people were never as smart as white people. That's the implication of what you just said.
Could be. That could be the implication. But then, on the other hand, babies are not born smart. Babies become smart, which proves one thing, just by following the logic. Logic came with the universe. People who are not smart can become smart. The white supremacists themselves were not smart. No baby comes into the world being smart. You don't have smart babies. Why? Because you have to have someone take care of that smart baby. The baby does not take care of itself. I don't know of any baby that comes here and just full-blown and just starts walking around taking charge of everything. I've never heard of such a baby. As a baby. Now, I've heard of some people who had unique characteristics, very unique characteristics. Certainly, according to the Christian ministers, Jesus of Nazareth had very unique capabilities and characteristics. But these characteristics only began to come to fruition when Jesus, I understand, was probably a preteen or right in his teens. That's just one example. I don't know about Buddha and Confucius and other people and Muhammad. I don't know at what age they were when it became obvious to someone that they had unique characteristics. But certainly, while the baby was a baby, the baby was not functioning as what we call now a grown person.
Mr. Fuller.
Or even a teenage person. The baby had to be cared for, had to be nursed.
Mr. Fuller, stay right there. More to come on the compensatory concept. I want to ask Mr. Fuller a question. Was there ever a time when black people were smarter than white people? Stay right there.
The hardest thing to do at times is to make changes in your routine. Don't let that hold you back.
Oh, wait a minute. They told us we had it all, Jordan. Well, yeah, I guess in a way we are running out of oil.
Your opportunity is now to get up-to-the-minute information, great entertainment, and stimulating talk programs on your computer. Just log on to TalkTainmentRadio.com. Click Listen Live to hear a program. TalkTainmentRadio.com can also be heard on your cell phone. Talktainment Radio. We go where you go.
Look out, automobiles. Here we come. Now that's radio. The world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard.
Hi, I'm Joan London, and if you're worried about your parent or a loved one living alone like I was, and you want reliable senior care information, then call A Place for Mom, the nation's largest senior living referral service. You'll get free information on assisted living, Alzheimer's care, nursing homes, even important financial information.
They had obviously researched every place, not just given me names. Really? They found me a place for what she could afford, and it was magnificent.
We're now very confident that she's safe, and they just helped every step of the way, and I can't thank them enough.
So if you're struggling to find reliable senior living information, call A Place for Mom. This is a free service, and you can trust them to help you.
If you're struggling to find reliable senior living information for your mom or dad, then call or go online to get the free help you need during this turbulent time. Call now, 800-371-5898, 800-371-5898.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461, 202-484-5461.
Are you a minority or women business owner looking for a great resource for your business? Well, you can stop looking. MBE Magazine is the one for you. MBE Magazine has been a national resource for minority and women business owners for almost 30 years. No one supports and understands you like MBE Magazine. Visit them today at www.mbemag.com to subscribe to the digital or print version. MBE is a proud sponsor of the Exceptions to the Rules radio show.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard, the world's greatest radio. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week at this time. You can catch us live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on TalkTainmentRadio.com. We're doing it live. Or you can capture, or you can listen to, us tonight, the replay at 10 p.m. on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Or you can go to the podcast and get a whole bunch of downloads of what Mr. Fuller is talking about and what questions he's asked and answered, and a host of other things regarding the compensatory concept. Mr. Fuller, was there ever a time when black people were smarter than white people or white supremacists? Based on how you have studied it, based on how you see it, was there ever a time, or were we always victims of white supremacy from the very first time that we met? Was there ever a time when we were smarter? Mr. Fuller.
My answer is I don't know. There are a lot of people who say that black people, are super smart people right now, and that black people always have been, and that black people were once, rule the world and all this. And I don't disparage that, and I don't argue about it. I just simply say, what are we supposed to be doing now? Because that's really all that counts. Even if there had been no people, no black people, on the planet at all, ever. And that black people just appeared in the universe, say at 5 o'clock this morning. Let's just say hypothetically. Just imagine, black people suddenly appeared here at 5 o'clock this morning. Before then, there had been no black people in existence anywhere in the universe. They just suddenly appeared at 5 o'clock this morning. They just started showing up at different places. I mean, just suddenly you have some black people on the planet. Okay? Now, let's just look at it that way, because that's the way I prefer to look at it. And then you simply say, okay, we are here. H-E-R-E. That's all it takes. Just like a baby that comes into the world. The baby doesn't know anything about what went before. The baby begins to perceive that it is here. Now, lots of things may have gone before that baby appeared. There were lots of things that had gone on before Jesus appeared. But once Jesus got here, Confucius got here, Muhammad got here, Moses got here, some of the Buddha, some of the other people who later became prominent, when they got here when they got here, regardless of what had happened before. So, some of these people became very prominent after they got here, even though there were plenty of things. There were bison, there were alligators, there were other people. There were a lot of events that had happened long before any of these people arrived. But the people arrived when they arrived. So each and every person, in my way of thinking, according to the logic, because every person comes here a baby for the most part, you just come here, you become aware of things, and at some point you should become aware of problems. The baby in that crib becomes aware of a problem. And that is, at some point, the baby has what I started out this conversation with this morning. The baby starts having wants. The baby comes here wanting something. That's why the baby cries out, letting people know, I'm here. I have needs. There are things that I want. I'm not even too sure of what I want, but I want something because I'm here.
Okay.
And I'm letting you know that I want something. And most people are aware that babies come here crying. The minute you slap start the mechanism that starts that baby to breathe, and the baby inhales and then exhales. And when that baby exhales, along with that exhaling of breath, the baby cries out, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm putting everybody on alert.
Right.
So I started off this conversation saying that we are all babies. We never leave that baby state because we are not, we don't know everything that there is to be known.
Does that mean
that's what makes you a baby?
Does that mean white supremacists are also babies?
Sure they are, because the white supremacists don't know everything. They just know how to dominate black people. That's limited knowledge. All right? They spent a lot of time figuring that out, while black people were going around making everything else apparently a priority. The white supremacists were saying, we are going to make a priority of dominating you based on your color. And we're not only going to dominate you, we're going to enjoy mistreating you. That's going to be our chief form of enjoyment. This is why most of the jokes in the world that have ever been invented are about black people. Black people joke about each other. And some of the most well-paid among black people are black people who disparage and joke about other black people. You don't make a lot of jokes about white people, all right? But, I mean, if you are really, serious about being an entertainer and whatnot, you got to say a whole lot of things and do a lot of things that are really kind of a put-down of black people, put-down of yourself. Kind of goes with the territory under the system of white supremacy. We all understand that. And the white supremacists are the biggest ones at all. I mean, when I was at a younger person, just about most of the most poisonous, you might say, most self-deflating jokes were about black people. And, when you hear, whenever I was around white people back in the 1940s and 50s, and they would say, "Hey, let me tell you a joke." I would almost cringe because I know that the joke is going to be something disparaging about black people.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And sometimes I got to the place when I was in the military, I heard so many of them, I would just say, wait a minute. Let's not have any jokes. I don't want to hear any jokes this morning. I don't want my morning spoiled. Let's not have any jokes. I don't want to hear any jokes. Because I knew that it was going to be something that directly, indirectly was going to be directed toward dark-skinned people. You know, so
Mr. Fuller, we're joined on the line by a caller who has a question. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to say greetings to you, Brother Kahari, and Mr. Fuller. My name is Warren from New Orleans, and I want to first of all thank Mr. Fuller for. I ordered the word guide, and I did receive the word guide, and I want to thank him. I am a attentive student of the counter-racist concept. But what I would like to do, I would like to use my status of VGQ, Mr. Fuller, and I would like to tweak the category of non-whites. I look at those of us who are physically identified as black around the world, who live in countries that are considered non-white, such as Arab countries, such as countries like in India, and, and the population of blacks that are sparse in Southeast Asian countries today. And we are mistreated in those countries by those populations that are considered non-white. And then when we look at our neighborhoods in the United States, many of these type of non-white people, various Arab groups and Southeast Asian groups and East Asian groups and South Asian groups, own certain enterprises in our neighborhoods and mistreat us. So I would like to, for my usefulness of the counter-racist code, tweak the concept of non-white to look at those people on the planet who are physically identified by their dark brown and black skin with tightly curled and kinky hair on the planet, even those in the South Pacific.
Let me be clear. Let me be clear about what I think you're saying. You're saying that if you look at history, you'll find that the so-called Arabs held black people in slavery. If you look at India, you'll find that black people were horribly oppressed as untouchables and Sudras and others. And so you're beginning to wonder, does this apply, this notion of white supremacy, apply to those people who might be classified as near white also? Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, when we look at the Indian region and we go back 2,500 years, there are codes that were put in place by the Hindu religion that segmented those that, because you had an Aryan invasion. You had a white skin invasion that came
in the Indus Valley.
And they subjugated those indigenous blacks, and they used a code called Varna, which means color.
Yes.
So my point is, to bring it to 2013, I don't see the Arab groups, East Indian groups, to me in the same category with black, because those people are controlling a segment of economic activity that are allowing them to have leverage on the global scale. And so therefore, and I'm going to say this and go and listen to the response. When I look at I think also for using my VGQ status, that we should adopt a concept called Africa, a concept called blackness, as a rallying point, as a compensatory behavior against the apparent universal disdain of blackness, to put us on a competitive level with white supremacy, and then thrust forward for justice.
Wow. That's very, very, very deep. Mr. Fuller, let me get your response.
Well, if I understand what's being said, we're talking about shades of black. Black people really have total contempt for each other. Doesn't make any difference what their shades are. And the darker the people are, the greater the contempt. This is all a result of white supremacy. And the terms like Arab, according to the word guide and all like that, if I have it in there, they're not in the color scheme. There's no such thing as an Arab color. See, we're talking about color here. There's only 3 categories of color: white, non-white, and white supremacists. And you have to be a white person, classified as white and functioning as white, in order to qualify as a white supremacist. That has to be your designation. There are a lot of people who are categorized as white, who you may take a look at them and you might say, well, I don't quite know whether that person is white or not. But if the person is accepted as white by other white supremacists, that makes it the law. So you have to be white, first of all. Your category is basically white, W-H-I-T-E, in order to qualify to be a white supremacist. If you're in the non-white category, you just have shades of non-white. And all non-white people are opposed to each other by their conduct. Just look at, because we're confused people. And confused people, particularly based on color, we're really insane. And we just go at each other all the time in every area of activity. We can't stand each other because we can't stand ourselves. And so we attack each other. Based on what? Based on what the white supremacists say. They are the ones who make these decisions. And they will say that this is the favorite non-white person for the time being. And they will bestow favors on certain non-white people in certain places at certain times, and then have the other non-white people mad at those non-white people, all of them non-white. Because even what we call, if we try to come up with a category where we say, hey, let's get rid of all these different other classifications like Arab and all like that as being a part of the black experience. So, since first of all, you'd have to identify what an Arab is, because there are a lot of people who are very dark-skinned who are called Arabs. So where's the cutoff point? See, these are shades of darkness. There's no such thing as a shade of white. You don't have shades of white. In paint, if you're talking about paint, like you put on a house, you have shades of white. You have what they call eggshell white. You have off-white. And then I've asked the question, how far off? 2 feet? 17 inches? What are we talking about? Off-white? I mean, what are you talking about? Is that a color? Well, the white supremacists may say that it is when you start talking about people. But basically, they just say white, W-H-I-T-E, at the top of the list of every census. That's white. And they're implying that white is the only one that really counts anyway, and the rest is just a bunch of scraps, a whole bunch of mishmash, a whole bunch of just spaghetti and bean soup and whatever. Just a bunch of stuff thrown together. Most of what the people on the planet that black people call black, if you look at us, most of the so-called black people on the planet are dark brown. Even the darkest of black people in what we call Central Africa, whatever that means, which I say it means nothing when it comes to color. That's just a place. That's just a name, and it's really not a place. Because the white supremacists will say that Egypt is not in Africa. You have a thing called Black Africa. But when you go there and look at the trees and look at the mountains, and some of them have snow caps because they're way up. These mountains are pretty tall, like Mount Kilimanjaro. I mean, and so you say, this is Black Africa? Are you talking about the rocks? Are you talking about the trees? Are you talking about the grass? It's not black. Say, oh no, we call it Black Africa because of the people. Well, wait a minute. What people? You're looking at the people, and they range anywhere from what you would call black from medium brown. So are you saying black and brown? Oh, no. When you say black and brown, you're talking about black people and Latinos in Southern California, way away from Kenya, way away from the Congo, way away from Zimbabwe. I mean, you know, if you're looking for some brown people, you got to go to what they call Latin America. Wait a minute. I'm looking at black people who are called black people, but I'm looking at some brown people. In fact, most of them are brown.
Mr. Fuller, stay right there. Hold on. And caller from New Orleans, I want you to stay right there. We want to get to this real soon. This is TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
Ugh, what are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
What are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. It's been a long time since we've had an adventure in the forest.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
You're right. I should get out.
Yeah, the forest is not that far away.
Hey, Mom!
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
Our lives are affected every day by innovations from the minds of African Americans. Support the United Negro College Fund, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Visit uncf.org or call 1-800-332-UNCF. Brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
Peace Corps. Life is calling. How far will you go? To find out more, call 1-800-424-8580 or visit peacecorps.gov.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard, the world's greatest radio. I'm Brother Kahari sitting in with Mr. Fuller. You can catch us live every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or you can catch us at the replay tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, again on TalkTainmentRadio.com, or you can go to the podcast at TalkTainmentRadio.com, click Programs, and then go straight to the type in Compensatory Concept. There it is. Bam. Go and listen to your shows that you may have missed. I'm joined on the line by a brother from New Orleans, Louisiana. We're happy to have him here. And he has asked, I think, a very interesting and probing, thought-provoking question about white supremacy and how should we view it when it comes to the mistreatment of people who are classified as black by people who are classified in some way as non-black but not white. And so Mr. Fuller, I think, is in the process of completing his response to that, and then I wanted the response from the brother from New Orleans. Mr. Fuller, go ahead, please.
What I'm asking people to do, according to my view, I mean, of course, you think about it before you act on it and whatnot, but I'm saying, logically speaking, you got the three categories: white, non-white, white supremacists. That's it. Anytime you try to chop it up any other way, what's going to happen, and what I've seen happen, is that the non-white people become more confused. The white supremacists are not confused. They're the only ones who are not confused. They know what white means. And the non-white people, all of them, know what white means. So they are the ones who become confused because the white supremacists make us confused with all these different categories. Most of them don't even have a color connotation, like Arab. What color is an Arab? I mean, if you ever put, if you're going to put the colors on the wall and you say, now, out of all the colors in the world, I'm going to tell you what the color of an Arab is. What color would that be? Or I'm going to tell you what the color of a Guamanian is, or a Chamorro, or what color a Mexican is, the exact color. Now, no deviations now. Now, if the person is Mexican, we have a Mexican color. Now, the Mexican color is not the same as the Puerto Rican color. So now, don't get that confused. And we even have a New Orleans color. Somebody might even do that. The white supremacists will definitely do it if they think that you'll buy into it. They'll say, oh, if you're talking about the color of the people in the southern part of the hills of Arkansas, now if you're talking about the people who are there, they are not really black, and they're not white for sure. They're definitely not white, but they're not really black. And so what color are these people in southeastern Arkansas who are people of, you can't say that they're really people of color because they're really not black and whatnot. Now, what you have is mass confusion among the victims of white supremacy, which is what you always had. Now, I'm advocating that we stop that confusion. We stop being confused about that, because once we dip into it, we'll just keep adding to it and adding to it and adding newer and more categories. But when a census is taken, you'll still have that white is at the top. So the only people who will be out here hitting each other over the head with the chromosome book about what shade of color is the shade of color, Wednesdays, this is the shade of color for Wednesday, this is the shade of color for Friday, we'll get just that crazy because we're already crazy enough. And so we'll be hitting each other over the head with all of these different the coloring books that we have, maybe about 800 of them. Like someone told me that in so-called Brazil right now, they have something like maybe 50 or 60 categories.
Actually, it's 144.
144 categories, and what are they worth? That's what you have to ask. So you get all these new categories and whatnot. I mean, everybody going around measuring shades. Well, let me look at the paper bag and check with this. And now, what paper bag do we have available right now? Well, we'll use this one for today. Friday, we'll use another one. Now, what is happening here? The white supremacists are over behind the wall laughing at all of them, all of us, because they say, now, these are the characteristics of some black people who are truly lost. They're arguing about shades when the only shade is really not a shade. It's embodiment within itself, complete, and that's white. Why don't they deal with that? They're running away from having to deal with me. And as long as I have them running away from having to deal with me, I got them all of their shades, which means nothing to me. I just know that they are not white. And as long as they're not white, they're a bunch of junk.
Let me give the brother from New Orleans a chance to respond to what he heard and get his thoughts. Go ahead, caller.
I think that I'm highly appreciative to the counter racist ideas that Mr. Fuller shares with us, and I think that so far they, in my biased opinion, are superior to any other analysis and recommendations what to do. But to contribute to the elimination of confusion that the white supremacist uses, I have found useful to take the non-white category and break it into two. And this is how I've done this. I said one category of non-whites are non-whites generally allowed special privileges under the white supremacists, And in another category of non-whites, the darkest shade of all non-whites, universally not granted special privileges. Now, the non-white category generally allows special privileges. I do have Arabs, because within Arab countries, they are, because the concept of population dislocation comes in, our diasporas. And we have the darkest of non-white people that reside among other non-white people as a result of historical population dislocation, and yet they're the most disdained. I understand that Prince Bandar, the Saudi prince, who is very obviously black-looking,
right,
that the royal family would not allow him to be the king because of his complexion.
Mm-hmm.
If the king that they have now died, understand? So I put in the first non-white category, I put various Arab population groups, East Asian groups, and South Asian population. They are allowed competitive participation in enterprise on the planet. They are allowed to control and monopolize merchant categories whereby the darkest shade of all the non-white people, identified characteristically by their tightly curled hair and maybe wavy hair and broad features, are not allowed that at all nowhere on the planet.
You know, there's a book, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, it's called The Rising Tide of Color by Dr. Lothrop Stoddard. Are you familiar with it?
No, sir.
It came out in 1919, and it's The Rising Tide Against White Supremacy. That was the actual title. And I don't know if you've heard of Madison Grant. You've heard of eugenics, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You should try to get this book. He talks about just what you were talking about. He talks about separating the non-white world based on color and looking at each one and rating each one. He said he put the yellow man a step above the brown man, a step above the red man. And he said the black man, the black man, was nothing, no history, done nothing, put down all over the world. And that has been, if you look around the world, that's exactly the way it's been shaped up. That's exactly, and you're hitting on something, because the closest to them have been the ones that have been allowed to rise. And just like when they were bringing in people into this area of the world known as the United States, they let Mexicans come in, but they would not let the Haitians come in great numbers. So I think you might be on to something.
Let me say this. Also, you look at the concept of Mexico, the concept of, let's say, Saudi Arabia or Yemen. In those populations, they are the darkest of the dark that originate as a result of population dislocation called the slave trade, that are in these places who are subjected to the most inhumane treatment. I was staying in the South Pacific. I visited Vanuatu, Fiji, and it was interesting about all these places. The black populations are the indigenous populations, but who owns the grocery stores, the hardware stores? Vietnamese and the Chinese. So what happens when we have a counter-racist movement, which we should, to what degree some of these non-whites who are allowed special privileges try to superficially use that category to join forces just to continue to exploit the darkest of all the non-white people.
So I take it you are very concerned about the Chinese entrance into Africa at this point, especially among black people of Africa. Am I correct?
I think Mr. Fuller said something very serious. He said the white supremacists do not know everything about how to dominate the non-white peoples. So to what degree will the white supremacists have to make an alignment with the non-white category that have been allowed special privileges to help dominate the darkest of all the non-white people, characterized by their tightly curled hair, slightly wavy hair, and features?
Heavy. Let me have Mr. Fuller take us home in his thinking. Mr. Fuller.
Yes, I'm going to try to do this, and I'm going to try to wrap it up, too, because this is something where black people, in my opinion, we wander off into exactly where the white supremacists want us, and that is in that state of trying to untangle the mess that they have made. This is all of their mess, not some of it. The white supremacists produced all of this mess. If we're going to go after the source of the problem, the source, see, because dancing around the source is not going to get us anywhere. We'll just be running around in a circle for the next 10 million years. But we can wrap this thing up simply by going at the source of the problem. And we do that mechanically. And that is, I have a slogan, very simple. Replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Now, I want to focus on the production of justice. And it doesn't make any difference what shade anybody is. See, that's what we'll eliminate that in just one fell swoop, rather than just spend the next 10,000 years trying to measure what shade each and every person is on the planet, what shade of color they are when they're standing in the sun and when they're standing in the shade. That'll drive us just crazier and crazier and crazier. Let's go with what we're really trying to produce here. We're trying to produce, or we should be trying to produce, a product, just one product, not 1,000, just one, a product called justice. Getting rid of racism is about one thing, producing a product called justice. So if you go there with that in mind, go there among any people, any neighborhood, the people down the street, the people next door to you, the people right there in your own family. If you're going to start walking through that, you're going to have a problem right in, what we call the black family, because not everybody's the same shade. And so what is everybody going to do? Start hacking each other to death? We're already doing that. So, what's new? So, let's go at this scientifically. And that is, go for what we're really trying to accomplish. Going back to that baby state. What should that baby coming into the world, any baby, should have in mind? One thing. And that is compensating for the one thing that is missing. What is the one thing that is missing among the people of this entire planet? The one thing that is really needed more than anything else, more than any mountains, more than any new scientific inventions, more than land or money. The one thing that is needed is a product called justice. And what is the definition of justice according to what I have written? The definition is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. If we go forward with that message, because ultimately that's going to be the message. That's what we're aiming for, ultimately. You can go among any people, any village, any city, and say, hey, I'm about one thing, eliminating this unjust system called white supremacy and replacing it with a better system. That system would be justice, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. I don't care who that person is. And guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That way you're not even dealing with who's smarter than who. You're just looking around saying, I didn't come here to ascertain who's smarter than who. I came here to find out who's being mistreated and who needs constructive help. That's all. There's nothing else to be considered. Absolutely nothing else. Zero. Who's being mistreated? So stop that mistreatment. Stop it right this minute. And who needs the most constructive help? Now, everybody needs help of some type. I don't care who it is. The help might be just finding the way to the bus stop, getting across the street. Or it might be you need a $1,000 loan. Everybody needs help. So you find out who needs the most constructive help. And that's the person you help first. That's the way it should be. That's the kind of way the world should have been in the beginning if we're going to have a world, ever had one in the past or will have one in the future.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Caller, thank you also. I appreciate you. You've been listening to The Compensatory Concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Radio, the way it should be heard.